welcome to the Flourishing Center podcast. I'm Emilia Zhivatovskaya, your host and founder of the Flourishing Center. We are training the change agents of the world and equipping them with research-based tools for healthy, happy, and successful living. And we're so grateful that you're here. Each episode features 3 sections. First is the Science Says section, where we summarize a recent research study and show you how to put the science into action. Next, we give you a research-based life hack with simple strategies for incorporating positive psychology into your life for greater well-being. And then our Practitioner Corner is where we interview someone who's out there living, breathing, and spreading positive psychology in their own unique way. Learn about how they're growing their personal and professional work and get inspired with strategies for how you might use positive psychology in your own life. Thanks for listening, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Flourishing Center podcast. In today's episode, we're going to look at a simple and tested intervention for building self-compassion, self-efficacy, and self-regulation. Then we'll explore what does it mean to become more compassionate to oneself, and I'll introduce you to the woman behind a movement that is helping people all over the world spread the word that other people matter. Let's dive in. Today's research article is called, Does a Short Self-Compassion Intervention for Students Increase Healthy Self-Regulation? A Randomized Controlled Trial. The answer to this question is yes. Yes, it did. And let me tell you about the study. The authors took 158 students and randomly assigned them to either the intervention or waitlist control group, where they went through a mindfulness, self-compassion, and stress reduction intervention. In this article, they look to understand what impact would studying self-compassion make on students' perspective of their sense of self-efficacy, meaning what their beliefs were about their strengths and their ability to handle the tasks at hand given their strengths. They also look to understand how it would impact their impulse control, their self-judgment, negative self-directed thinking, self-compassion, anxiety, and depression. As you might imagine, learning mindfulness and self-compassion did in fact improve all of these benefits. In particular, self-compassion reduced stress and anxiety. I was more interested in understanding what did they actually do in this intervention? How do they actually help people recognize that self-compassion is a good thing, particularly in today's world where so many people think that they need to be critical of themselves in order to do the things that they want to do. Many people fear that if they become too compassionate, they'll become complacent and they won't move towards the goals and things that they want to create in their life. So here's what they did in this intervention. It was 3 courses that they did for students combined with mindfulness practices that were audios that they listened to in between the sessions. Those 3 90-minute sessions consisted of teaching people about the benefits of self-compassion and giving them simple experiential exercises that they would do with every session. The first 90-minute session was all about what is mindfulness and what is self-compassion, and then giving them the opportunity to participate in the intervention. The students were asked to write about what they would say to themselves in order to improve something they disliked about themselves. Then they were asked to reflect upon and write down what they would say to a friend under similar circumstances. And I invite you to think about that just for a moment. Think about something that you dislike about yourself. And then think about what you would say to yourself about how you would have to improve that thing. And then think about how you might recommend to a friend or how you might approach your friend about how they might make that change in a similar situation. Most of us would report that we would be harder on ourselves than we would on our friends. And that is part of self-compassion, treating oneself with kindness. In the next section, they reflected about that question. How do they tend to treat themselves versus others? And what influence this type of self-talk makes on us over time? The next session looked at mindfulness and some of the common physical stress reactions, shame reactions, and impact that self-criticism makes on ourselves. They looked at how self-compassionate behavior would also influence the body and the mind, and how activating the sense of self-soothing is actually an evolutionary adaptation that we have that can be helpful. That when we're no longer just trying to fight for our life to stay alive, that we're trying to broaden and build our sense of connection to others and to ourselves, that actually self-compassion can get us there further. For the third and final session, they talked about positive feelings and asked people to reflect on how they want to live and how they can cultivate self-compassion for themselves as well as other people. In between that, they did 15-minute audio sessions where they would listen to things like affectionate breathing or loving kindness meditation every day. They practiced breathing into their body, doing body scans, and also a meditation that was about giving and receiving compassion. In this short intervention, they made a significant impact on people's sense of well-being. And what excites me about this is it's a total of 4.5 hours of class time. And here are people who are making significant shifts that they were able to follow at 6-month follow-up and see that people still had a significant reduction in their stress and a significant increase in their sense of self-compassion. So what does this teach us? It teaches us that people need to learn about the benefit of self-compassion, recognizing that self-criticism can get us to meet our goals in the short term. However, as these authors have concluded that when it comes to long-term goals, self-compassion can get us further. The authors write that mindfully acknowledging one's imperfections as part of being human and working towards growing in accordance with their values and one's goals is a healthy way to approach self-compassion. They go on to say that unhealthy self-regulation tactics, such as self-judgment and habitual negative self-directed thinking, might work in the short run. However, when it comes to lasting positive change, self-compassionate stance might be more effective in kindly guiding oneself towards the changes that they want to see. I encourage you to internalize the science and explore the question, what would it look like if you were more self-compassionate? Up next, we have life hacks, simple strategies to help you hack your life towards greater well-being. In today's episode, we're talking about self-compassion, its benefit, how it impacts our psychological health, and how to get more of it. Before we explore how to become more self-compassionate, it is so important for people to understand what the research has been telling us. It tells us that many people approach their well-being and approach making changes in their life through the pathway of harsh self-criticism. We are our own worst enemy. We self-sabotage. We call ourselves names. We poke at our imperfections, ignoring the things that are working in our lives. And we are narrowed in our tendencies because oftentimes we fear that if we were to just focus on the things that we're grateful for, or that maybe if we weren't beating up on ourselves, something bad might happen. What the research is telling us is that self-compassion builds our well-being and builds our propensity to problem solve, to commit to our long-term goals, and that self-compassion can carry us further. So it's important to use the science to let it tell you that it is okay to be self-compassionate and to treat yourself with the same kindness that you would give to others. One simple strategy that you can use is build on what Kristin Neff calls just overall kindness. Ask yourself, are the things that you are saying to yourself something that you would say to your best friend? Are they something that you would want someone to say to your child? And as the saying goes to children on the playground, I often tell my brain, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And sometimes we have to be that stern when it comes to our own mind chatter. A second strategy is to recognize how much of the stuff that we are struggling with is human, not in a way that you permit your behavior to continue. If you're feeling angry at yourself and feeling shamed as a parent because you just snapped at your child, we're not condoning the behavior of what you did. However, calling yourself a terrible parent or the worst parent in the world or calling yourself a monster is not going to help you figure out what happened and how you can prevent it from happening in the future. Understanding some of the science around energy and energy management that we get depleted can help you better understand what happened in that moment so that you can change it moving forward. So having a sense of shared humanity is such an important part of what enables people to be self-compassionate. And the third part of Kristin Neff's model is mindfulness. If you're unaware of your tendencies, the things that push your buttons, or what your thoughts are telling you at any moment, how you're feeling at any moment, you're more likely to come from a place of knee-jerk behaviors or reactions, and it will be harder to intervene and to remember to be self-compassionate. So practicing mindfulness, as we just saw in our research article, is so important. Just slowing down and asking yourself, what do I hear? What do I see? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I touch? And coming back to that time and time again. And as Eckhart Tolle points out, when you find your mind wandering, rather than getting caught up in why your mind is wandering and what you were just thinking about, just simply use the mantra, I'm back, and come into the present moment. Being more mindful will enable you to choose self-compassion instead of self-criticism when the opportunity presents itself. Up next, meet Cheryl Rice. She's starting a movement, and she'd love for you to be a part of it. She wants people all over the world to know that they matter. Learn more about the You Matter Marathon and how this woman has transformed her life and the life of others to spread the sacred message. Hello everyone, and join me in welcoming Cheryl Rice to today's Practitioner Corner. Cheryl Rice is a leadership coach, author, social entrepreneur, and a speaker. She is coming in to us from right outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Cheryl is the proud parent of a dog named Gracie, a cat named Boa, and two beautiful stepchildren. And she is doing some really, really remarkable work in the world that I'm so excited to share with you guys. Little known fact about Cheryl is that while she's doing all sorts of work in the world and spreading positive psychology, she also looks to make an impact in the smallest of ways, including that she's a litter picker-upper. When she's walking down the street and she sees something that doesn't belong there, she's the type of person that will just go up and throw it away, which someone who is a dog owner who seems to think that cigarette butts look like the same shape as her dog treats. I very much appreciate that, Cheryl. So on behalf of other dog owners out there, we thank you for the litter picking upping that you do in the cities. And Cheryl, we're so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Amelia. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be here.
Cheryl, tell us a little bit about how you got started in positive psychology.
I actually got started in positive psychology years ago when I was exposed to Martin Seligman's work. I actually followed him from the beginning when he was positing the theory of learned helplessness. And then I just continued to follow his work in positive psychology and had the pleasure of actually auditing a class he did at Penn years ago. This was well before there was positive psychology programs and certificates. And then after my youngest went back to college or left for college, I decided it was time for me to really take a deeper dive into the area of positive psychology, not just as a layperson, but as a practitioner. And that's when I signed up for the Flourishing Center's Positive Psychology Certificate Program, and boy, did it change my life.
Thank you, Cheryl. Tell us, what are some of the ways in which you've been applying positive psychology personally?
Well, personally, I would say I use the techniques I learned in gratitude every single day. I am a gratitude journaler. I list 3 things at the end of every day that I'm grateful for, and I also add why I'm grateful and what my contribution may have been to elicit that experience that I'm grateful for. And I found actually that doing that leads me in my days to be more mindful of, oh, that's something I want to include in my gratitude journal tonight. So it's not just become a task, but really a way of being and enhancing my experience of life as it flows. Another aspect of positive psychology that's really permeated my day-to-day life, it's kind of ironic, I'm going to say sleep. Sleep hygiene has improved monumentally, and I just love the different behaviors that I can do, such as keeping a sleep and wake schedule that are consistent. For instance, I now sleep with darkening shades on my eyes, and I look pretty hideous, but it does help me to get a good night's sleep. So having some sleep hygiene practices has been a big deal. And I would say sometimes I do suffer from anxiety moments of thinking, what if? What if this presentation doesn't go well? What if this podcast doesn't go well? And I found the technique of looking at best and worst thing that could happen, and then looking at what actually might be happening helps me in the moment reframe and kind of get with reality and perform at my best.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl, and a reminder that positive psychology is about those moments or the specific little contributions that we make little by little by little to put the science into practice. And those are great practices. Thank you. And I'm curious how positive psychology has set up your trajectory. You've created a marathon, a social movement. Tell us more about the You Matter Marathon and what you're up to professionally.
Well, I'd be delighted to tell you about the You Matter Marathon because it's astounded me, to be honest. And basically, the best way I can tell you about it is with a story. About 2 years ago now, a colleague gave me a business-sized card with only the words "You Matter" on it. And I really felt at the time she gave me the card that I had been hugged. And I came back home and I ordered my own cards off of Vistaprint, and I started giving them out, first just to family and friends who were delighted when they received a card. And then I started sharing the cards in my community to people who make a difference and I see regularly, but I may not always take the time to acknowledge, like the person who sells me my fruit at the farmer's market or my dry cleaner. Then I started getting a little mischievous and leaving the cards in places where I wouldn't know who would find them, but frankly, I took great delight in imagining the person, for instance, at the gas station, when I would put a card in the credit card holder at the gas station, just imagining the next person to fill up their tank of gas and get a You Matter card. So I was enjoying that when one day I was in my local grocery store and I was standing in the checkout line behind a woman who looked to be in her mid-60s, and it was clear the cashier knew her just a little bit. And the cashier asked her how she was doing, and she said, "Not so good." She looked down. She said, "My husband just lost his job and my son is, quote, up to his old tricks again. I just don't know how I'm going to get through the holidays." And she went to pay with food stamps. And at that moment, I didn't know what to do. My heart ached for her and I wasn't sure, was it appropriate to pay for her groceries, to ask for her husband's resume? So I didn't do anything. She leaves the store and I complete my transaction and check out. And it just so happens we're both in the parking lot, the only ones there returning our cards. And I went up to her and I said, "You know, I couldn't help it over here. You're going through a really hard time right now. I'm so sorry. I just want you to have this." And I gave her a You Matter card. And she started to cry. And she said, "You have no idea how much this means to me." And we hugged. And then I went back to my car and I started to cry. It was at that moment, I really can't convey the mix of feelings that I was experiencing in my tears. I just knew that this was profound and incredibly moving and that we had had an interaction that wasn't about her and it wasn't about me. It was something transcendent, to be quite honest with you, Amelia. And it was then I knew that I wanted other people. Other people needed to feel this. And then I had the great gift, my positive psychology class through the Flourishing Center, and we were called on to do a final project. And I had, at that point, thought I was going to do something about incorporating positive psych in my work as a leadership coach, which is totally relevant, and I'm doing that. And my classmates, who of course I'd given You Matter cards to, really called me forth and said, "You know, Cheryl, there's something about you and these cards. You know, can you think of a way of connecting these cards with your final project?" And it was that interaction in the grocery store combined with my classmates really saying, "Go for it, follow your heart, not your head," that led to the idea of a You Matter marathon where I'd invite people to give out one card a day during November. And with the goal at that time, which seemed like an incredibly challenging goal, of giving out 10,000 cards in November of 2016.
Wow, Cheryl. And to date, I know that you've been doing your best to track how many lives might have been touched, or at least how many cards have been printed and possibly given out. Can you tell us more about the ways you've been trying to match and track this impact?
Yes. One of the things we did to invite and incent people to participate is I said, I will mail you 30 cards for free, 30 You Matter cards for free, no matter where you are in the world, if you sign up. And little did I know how many people would take me up on that offer. But gratefully, over 14,000 people participated last year, and we gave out almost 500,000 cards. And people from all 50 states and 59 countries participated in the marathon. And when I say participate, that means that we had almost 500,000 card shares, but every card share, again, is an interaction between two people. And that number is conservative, Amelia, because people still come up to me and they tell me, or they write to me and say, "I continue to order more cards on my own." So that's a conservative number, and I'm really more than proud. I'm in awe of it and the amount of people who want to spread this vital message. So that's what we know. And this year, our goal is to share 1 million cards during November. And we can talk a little bit later, if you like, about how people can get involved and be part of the magic.
Wow, Cheryl, incredible. Thank you so much. And I know that you've also received some profound stories from those who have participated in the You Matter Marathon about the impact that it's made to them to, on the one hand, do a very simple act, which is to hand out a card that says you matter. On the other hand, it's an act of vulnerability. And you've heard some really profound stories. Can you share some of them with us?
Sure. One story that touched me greatly, this really speaks to, you just never know, Amelia. We have a Facebook community for You Matter Marathon, and people would share their experiences day in and day out of giving out the cards. And for some people, it was a real challenge to give a card to a quote-unquote stranger. And so they'd be encouraged by others to, well, start, just give it to a friend or a family member. And interestingly, for other people, giving a You Matter card to a family member was even more of a challenge. So one of the stories that touched me, and I know our community members greatly, was a woman who was talking about her estrangement from her adult son, who had really had a difficult time grieving the loss of his father and got into some trouble that landed him in jail. And he was estranged from his mom, and his mom was so afraid that their relationship was permanently severed. He comes out of jail and he's living in a halfway house, and they had not been having good conversations. And she one day risked giving him a You Matter card, and he welled up with tears. And she said it was the first time she felt that they had connected in years, and that he actually asked for more cards so he could give them to people in the halfway house. And she said now they're on a path to reestablish a relationship. That just blew me away. Moving. Another story from a wonderful You Matter marathoner in New Zealand who works with people whose spouses are dying in hospice. And what she did was just so creative. She worked with her local pharmacy in New Zealand to have the pharmacist put You Matter cards in with the medicine. So when those caregivers came in to pick up their medicines for their loved one who was dying, they also received You Matter cards. Again, and we have a picture of the pharmacist in New Zealand with these You Matter cards. And finally, a story from a woman who works in community service out in California. And she works in a center that works on suicide prevention and gang prevention out there. And she told me that when she gave these cards to these gang members, that they just opened up in a way that they hadn't. They felt seen and valued. And she said literally it had been the most successful program they've done in 40 years was to share You Matter cards, which leads to one point I want to make is people can sign up as individuals, Amelia, and they can sign up as what we call ambassadors to groups, whether it be a church group, a school system, a company, or even a family. So that's one way that the You Matter magic gets spread out even further. But those are just 3 stories, and I could go on and on and on.
Thank you. I'm curious, when you use the words You Matter, what does that mean to you?
It's a great question. And I've thought about this a lot, especially because the first You Matter card that was given to me had a heart on it, which is beautiful. And as I said, it moved me. The cards we use in our design are a white card with black letters that say You Matter, nothing else. And that's part of the power and the elegance of these words to me is they are a complete sentence. You matter in this case, and I can't speak, Amelia, to what's in the heart of everybody who gives a You Matter card. From my perspective and the message that I'm wanting to share in the world is that we are all essential. And it's a way of saying, I see you, I honor you, you are significant. It's not, I love you, which is interesting. And sometimes we give it to people we love, but this message is independent of that. This message is saying, I don't even need to know if I like you. It's just saying, as a human being, you're a human being. What a miracle is that we happen to be human beings on the same planet at the same time, and we're seeing each other on the same train platform. Or you give me my coffee every day, and it makes a difference to me. So it's just honoring the inherent integrity of our humanity. That's what this is saying from my perspective, Amelia.
Wow, thank you, Cheryl. And Cheryl, I know that as you have been going through this marathon and sharing this work with the world, you've been identifying all the many elements of positive psychology that are showing up in the stories that you hear and the impact that's making. What are some of the positive psychology concepts that stand out the most for you?
Oh, there's so many. And this is why it's such like a big bang for the buck. If you're a positive psychology person, this delivers, because one of the things it does is help broaden and build positive emotions. I believe this is the work of Barbara Fredrickson, who gave us this concept of how emotions broaden and build our capacity for problem solving and more positivity. So I would say that's one theory or model that this is speaking to. Another, again, from Barbara Fredrickson, are micro moments of positivity. Every interaction is a micro moment of positivity, and I believe the world is starving for micro moments of positivity. We're all inundated with micro moments and macro moments today of negativity and helplessness and sorrow. And man, oh man, are we looking for ways we can shift the energy. And so this is a big, again, incredible, powerful, potent. It's medicine. It's absolutely medicine. So for the spirit and the soul, micro moments of positivity. Another one certainly is gratitude. We do this in November purposefully because it does, at least in the States, tie in with the holiday of Thanksgiving. And a lot of educators and families are looking for ways, original ways, powerful ways of extending gratitude. And so we find that this is a beautiful way of saying thank you again to people we know or know tangentially, or people we just are grateful are in the world. So those are some that come to mind. I could think of more, and I certainly welcome your ideas as well as a scholar in this field.
Thanks, Cheryl. It's such a powerful example of the domino effect, the ripple effect of what happens within us when we are slightly uplifted. But it's also what happens when other people witness an act of kindness. And when we receive kindness, when we receive someone's act of gratitude, we are inspired and motivated to want to pay that forward. So I can just see the ripples upon ripples that just such a simple act can make.
Yes, and also that just brings to mind something a friend of mine said. She said, Cheryl, since I have the You Matter cards, I feel like I have a superpower in my pocket. And I think that builds to some of the, or alludes to some of the positive psychology literature around self-efficacy and agency, and how people are looking for ways to feel empowered and that they have an ability to make a difference in this world. And this gives people that sense of, I can make a difference. And if I can do this, wow, what other ways can I make a difference? So interestingly, a lot of people who are attracted to You Matter Marathon are people who I believe probably have a high strength of kindness and gratitude. And interestingly, they think they're signing up because they want to spread gratitude and kindness in the world. What they don't always recognize is what a powerful gift this is to themselves. You know, Dr. Stephen Post talks and studies the area of altruism, and he's done amazing work in this area that really speaks to this, that when we reach out and do good for others, the health benefits, the psychic benefits of what it does for ourselves. People who participated who would say, wow, this was the most powerful personal growth experience I've ever had, or this was the best November of my life.
Thank you, Cheryl. And how can people get their own copy of the You Matter cards? How can they get involved if they're inspired by the work that you're doing and that everyone is out doing today?
youmattermarathon.com. On that website, you can sign up either as an individual, and we will mail you 30 You Matter cards for free while supplies last. Cards are mailed out the middle of October. And we also tell you how you can get more than 30 cards if you want them, and you can sign up again as an individual or as an ambassador for a group or a large organization.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And Cheryl, any closing words, anything that you want people to know?
You matter.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thanks for catching our episode today. As you can see, kindness counts. Whether it be a simple act of kindness for oneself or reminding other people that who they are matters, we can pass this kindness on in the world. And every time we do so, our mind expands, our heart expands, and we remember our sense of connection to others. Thanks for listening and wishing you a flourishing day.